Hey everybody, it's Jesse Fragale here. I thought I'd reach out today just partially to keep my own sanity, but also to hopefully provide a little bit of insight for landlords and tenants, just as it relates to real estate in this kind of new reality that we're in. I hope everybody's staying safe and connected. We are social creatures, and I don't think that social distancing means that we can't, continue Skype calls, continue Zoom calls, be with your friends as best as you can remotely. And, I would encourage everybody to do that if you aren't already. I wanted to talk a little bit about the real estate side of this coin. I want to avoid here speaking specifically about commercial real estate because it's a bit of a different animal, and it is something that I don't think is at the top of the priority list when it comes to the government and to people right now. Sure, businesses definitely are going to be hurting right now, but I wanted to specifically talk about tenants and landlords in multi-residential and residential investing. I want to talk a little bit about what I think the prudent thing to be doing right now as a landlord, some of the things to avoid, dealing with tenants. I mean, at the end of the day, if you're a landlord and you want to stay in this game long term, those are your customers and they can't be treated poorly. This is a perfect time to really put that to the test, the way you treat your tenants and the way that you deal with crisis. I think right now the reality is set in for a lot of landlords that they are not going to be getting at least 100% of their rent payments come April 1. And indefinitely. I think the government has made a few steps, at least on our Canadian side, and I know different states and the feds south of the border have made adjustments in how easily we can obtain employment insurance or unemployment insurance, depending on which state you're in. And I think that's going to be helpful, but I also think the reality is the landlords are not going to be on the top of that list for the first people that tenants are looking to write a check to, and they shouldn't be, quite frankly. If food and other care is more essential right now, depending on the state you're in, certain states have basically said banning evictions right now. As a landlord, I'm all for. The idea of evicting a tenant right now is so far away from my mind that this misconception that landlords are just out to get tenants, I think that's not even on my mind right now. We do have to think about are the implications of that. Tenants know that they're not going to be evicted, so rent payments are not going to be on the top of their list. So I want to at least run through some of the things I've done as a landlord to deal with this, because the reality is I just started tallying up my expenses. When you start looking at $15,000, $20,000 a month for expenses for your real estate investments, like nobody can pay that if you're not getting rent from your tenants. So you really need to start looking at strategies at dealing with each individual expense and looking at what your options are. What I've done is basically this morning, I kind of ran through the top line expenses or the biggest expenses. I went through property tax, the mortgage, obviously, insurance, water, electricity, gas, basically called all the providers to figure out what the situation is. I know in the States, there's been a bit of quite a few funds or capital that's kind of been introduced to alleviate some of that. In Canada, I believe as part of an $82 billion package from the feds, CMHC, which is our agency mortgage insurance company, they have also put together a package to help lenders. The reason that's important is they are aware that if tenants can't pay, that means landlords can't pay. And if landlords can't pay, lenders are in the crunch. Right now, at least, my bank has basically said that they are giving deferral options to different landlords making payments, as well as people just with their personal mortgage. Just to keep in mind there, that's a deferral. It's not a freebie. You will pay that eventually, but hopefully it gets you through in the interim. So went through that, then went to contact your property tax, contact your city, figure out if there's anything that you can do there. I'm waiting to hear back on that end. In terms of the actual providers, one provider I had for gas basically said they're not doing anything. We'll see how long that lasts because, you can't get blood out of a stone. There are people that just are not going to be able to pay. And then I went into my utilities further, water, hydro, basically gave me a July 1 abatement period so that you don't have to pay as long as that time frame. It's helpful. I think it's important to go through all of the expenses you have and try to figure out which ones, if you're in a situation where you do see on April 1 that maybe you're getting 30% of your rent, 20%, for you that own only one or two single family homes, like that could be That could be 100% of your income. I think it's just prudent to kind of go through all of those items and figure out which payments you can make different arrangements for. The thing I would absolutely not do as a landlord, and it's 100% your responsibility to do, don't think that not communicating with your tenants is a solution. It is the worst thing you can do right now. Communicate with your tenants, make sure there's an open line of communication. And if you have third-party management, make sure you have weekly, at least, speaking with them, talking to them about what's been going on at your buildings, and making sure that the message gets through to your tenants, any communication that you have with your managers. That's number one. I think that as a landlord right now, it's important that we all work together. It's nobody's fault. We're kind of unified in this, in that it's not one person against the other. Like I said, you have the tenant level, landlord level, lender level, government level. We're all trying to do our best right now. That's kind of where I'm coming from right now. And, if there's anything I can do to help anybody, if you have any questions on this, if you want to have a Zoom call, I think it's important to stay connected with people. You can reach me on Instagram at jfragales, Fragalz, or Z for my Canadians. Hope that helps, and be healthy and stay safe.